All right, everyone. Welcome to our Digital Access Community Coalition call. I'm super excited you all could join us. For those of you I maybe haven't met, my name is Chelsea Summerlin, and I am the ICFL's Digital Skills Library Consultant. If you'd like to continue introducing yourself in the chat and letting us know where you're at and what the weather is like there, that would be phenomenal. So the purpose of these calls is to provide networking and learning around digital access topics in Idaho. Last time, we learned about the tech support that Lewiston City Library provides to its community. You can catch the replay of that as well as other recordings of our tech workshops and other calls on our YouTube channel. I will throw the link in the chat here in a few. Today, though, we are highlighting digital skills, especially for older adults. Here at the ICFL, we provide Idaho Digital Skills, which we like to call the gateway to work and life digital skills for all Idahoans. And while self-guided tutorials are fabulous for some folks, we all know that sometimes we need a more hands-on approach. If you've never used a mouse or a keyboard, self-guided learning is going to be really difficult. In-person support, one-on-one training, and more formal classes help meet learners where they are. So for today's call, we have a special guest, Sheena Smith, who is a fellow with Older Adults Technology Services, otherwise known as OATS. Throw any questions you have for Sheena in the chat as you think of them, and I will raise them as we go. We're going to plan on wrapping up maybe just a little bit before 3 p.m. Mountain Time. This call is, of course, being recorded, and I am going to send out the recording to everyone who registered. With that, I am going to turn it over to Sheena. Take it away.
Great, great. And can you hear me okay now?
Sounds good?
Good, good. Okay. Well, hi, everybody. As Chelsea said, I'm Sheena Smith, and I'm here to talk just a little bit about our particular learnings around the OATS program, Older Adults Technology Services from AARP. Um, we started our program. Let me see if I can advance the slides. Is the problem? Enter. There we go. Okay. Um, we started the program here in Idaho through our learning program, which I'm going to talk a little bit about here in just a second. But that was only a couple of years ago. So these are pretty fresh ideas that I'm going to tell you about, or lessons that we learned. But first, we need a little bit of nomenclature so as I am going through this, I'll likely try to remember what you may or may not know, and then um, make sure that we at least can communicate reasonably. So OATS, Senior Planet, AARP, oh my. So the OATS, Older Adults Technology Services, is actually a nonprofit, kind of an umbrella nonprofit at this point. It was founded in 2004, so it's 20 over 20 years old now, and what it's trying to do is offer technology programs, community training, some strategic engagement to change the way we age. So older adults is really what their focus is. Um, Oates actually formally joined in with the AARP family of foundations and organizations only 5 years ago as a charitable affiliate. So that's OATS, kind of an umbrella of overall for what we're going to talk about here. Senior Planet, on the other hand, is the consumer-facing community that OATS created. If you have been out on AARP, whether you're old enough or not, you probably should go out there. It's really crazy. But Senior Planet has um, a plethora, it's endless number of classes, all the way from knitting or talking about the Beatles to Bach. I mean, it is everything, but it also includes some technology portions as well. So there's yoga, chair yoga, and there's Tai Chi and all of that, but there's also the technology stuff. They have four buildings, four centers, four office rooms that are called their flagship centers. And then there's thousands of classes online, no kidding. And 700 partner sites, so they may just use part of a room or part of a building for some of their classes. And then so far, the numbers look like about 800,000 attendees annually, and none of this has a charge to it. It's all free of charge. Those Senior Planet programs strive to build technology skills, and they want to be able to actually measure those improvements of social, health, and financial aspects of the participants' life. So they have a really big goal, and if you look out there at AARP.com, you can see that they're doing a pretty good job. There's more. New Knowledge Adventures is a program that was established right in the AARP Idaho. So the program was leveraged from a program that's just like it over on the east side of the state, over in Idaho Falls and in Twin Falls. And but 15 years ago, we heavily leveraged it over into the Treasure Valley. And that program basically set up registration for classes for our audience here in the Treasure Valley. So there would be, we would go through CVent to register everybody. The venues would be managed, sourced and managed by NKA AARP, NKA volunteers, and then the advertising and marketing would be sent out via the NKA program management. Um, this program engaged dozens of volunteers, dozens of instructors. When we first started, it was something crazy like 75 to 100 classes that we would do in every, we had a fall and a spring session. And so it would be, and that would truly be everything from Mahjong to canasta to stargazing, bird watching, trips to the zoo, trips to the birds of prey. That program enclosed a lot of different things. And what we did was we just rolled our OATS classes into that entire process. And so that's really how we got started. Um, Talking a little bit about OATS and what OATS provides for the instructors was they do pretty much everything that we need. We really just needed to decide which classes we're going to teach. But essentially, Lisa Artiga and I, as of 2 years ago in March, we went through the fellowship training. It was 10 hours live. It was all online. The folks, our instructors were in New York and Denver, and very interactive. Maybe 10 or 12 of us learners, fellows, trying to be fellows, were online. And we went through the entire process, including the thinking behind oats and the learnings that we'd already had from about how to teach older adults and how that's the same and how it may be different. Oats also provides backup and support, so if you have any questions or anything, they're the folks to go to. But essentially, they have canned presentations that includes all the slides, their teacher guides at making sure you know how to keep the class engaged. What are some of the questions and answers you may want to expose to along with the presentation, as well as handouts to give to the participants. So they pretty much do the whole thing. Their real job for us was to try to train us on what they had already learned about teaching older adults. And we just rolled OATS right into that NKA learning program that I was talking about. Um, these are all in-person sessions. Registration was required, like everything else under New Knowledge Adventures. The advertisement, the classes were advertised via postcards. I think something like 10,000 of them went out across the state of Idaho every time, every session. Emails. AARP, as you may know, is very strict about sending out emails. But as long as the participants had said, please do send me information, then they allow you to do that. Facebook, there's Facebook account. There's Idaho has newsletters and websites. So there's all these ways to connect in with the audience to get them to register for the classes. The way that I think we may have gotten hooked up either through Tina, hi, or how Chelsea heard about us was we would use the libraries as part of our venues for some of the classes. When we were doing OATS these last 4 or 5 sessions, we used the Oak Park Library in Meridian, and we also used the Norco building, the medical building right there on the expressway at Eagle, at 84 and Eagle. They are longstanding supporters of the NKA program, and so it was easy to roll in and use that as a venue. So even though we sent out so many postcards and got so many, we already had so much attention through the NKA program. A couple of times we even just separately from NKA sent out postcards and registered folks to do just our program. So we just did kind of a mini OATS session of classes, 4 or 5 classes. But the attendance would be 3 to 15 people, on average about 6. And so we were able to, we felt like we were able to get our point across to this size group. But we really needed a bigger audience if we wanted to be able to hit some of the metrics for the amount of work and the amount of energy that it took for the classes. So it was a little bit of a problem for us going forward. I want to talk a little bit about, so these are the classes that we taught, but let me just make sure I'm being clear about all of the potential, I think this is it, um, online classes that are available. This is, I hope you can see this, is a list of the tech lecture classes, the titles that are there. As you can see, I mean, it is everything. It's the basics of some social media platforms, a lot of AI stuff. It's brand new as people are learning how to deal with that. But it goes all the way through genealogy, any one class that we did that was a lot of got a lot of attention was your smartphone. So everybody knows this thing is a computer that you walk around with in your hand, but most of us use something like less than 20% of the features of it, and then some of us use all of the features, and we're completely crazy. So there's a lot going on there, but our people, our audience needed some specific help with specific items. And so that was one of the things, a very, very important class that we did. But food delivery apps, um, the transition from cable to the streaming services was really big. So um, there's 18 pages here. So there's a lot of classes, a lot of different things that they have canned presentations for you to present. And so The next group here is actually talking about all the virtual programs, and then it gives you a little bit of a program description in case you need that to decide on which classes. So our biggest job was to figure out what we wanted to present, and these are the ones over the last 2 years that we have done. Most of these have been at one library or the other. So smartphone, all things Zoom. Zoom is a funny one, right? If you try to teach somebody about Zoom over Zoom, they kind of already know a little bit about Zoom, but there's a lot more to know about it. So it was good to be able to do that in person. Aging in place, online shopping, Bluetooth, understanding Bluetooth was a big one. Video chat, which we sort of think that everybody already knows how to do, but that one was an important one, particularly with our audience, with the rest of their family and staying hooked up with those guys. So, um, cloud storage. So these are the ones that we taught in the last 2 years over 5 sessions. And some of these we repeated because they were very well received, and we had more people that wanted to see those than others. Excuse me. Any questions so far? Because I
I'm not seeing any in the chat, but
okay,
if you have any questions to all the attendees, please feel free to put those in the chat at any point.
okay. Well, there are some tips and tricks that we learned along the way, and of course, a few challenges. And um, we wanted to everything that I've said so far, you could probably glean from some of the collateral and documentation or looking out on AARP.com or Senior Planet. But what we learned along the way is what I'm about to talk about now. So we were fellows that were taught through the lecture process rather than workshop. Workshop is the next step, and Gina may actually have already been trained in that, but we were lecture hoping to graduate to a workshop. But what we found was while the teaching material is exquisite, it's great, it's all there. It is good for helping you to lead you through the process of training or chatting with folks, trying to teach them about these different technologies. What we found in the classroom as you're sitting there with folks, that more hands-on, more flexible, more personable time was needed to be spent offline, to kind of not be on script, but more one-on-one questions and being able to actually talk about it from a angle that's different from what the lecture may have led us through. Very useful, but also needed that hands-on approach. Now, that only works in the um, person-to-person, face-to-face kind of sessions, although I know that many of these classes are being delivered over online, over Zoom or another platform, but I think over Zoom. And because you're able to see each other and you can ask specific questions, then it gives you that same opportunity to be a little more flexible than the lecture may have left you. Um, but essentially, everybody has a different phone or a different tablet or a different model of a phone. Laptops of all denominations. So the browser may be different and sometimes even different versions of the app. So as you're trying to show them exactly how to do something, sometimes it's difficult because the button isn't exactly where you're telling them it should be. So we really had a challenge with trying to do that effectively, and be remain tight with the lecture format. So we found that being a little more flexible worked wonders with our particular audience. Um, and some big lessons here. Um, Once you get over the fact that you can't answer all the questions, it's okay. It was different. My comrade Lisa, my partner in crime, she is a the 24-year veteran of education. And so, you're supposed to have all the answers. And you guys have been trained as fellows, so you should have all the answers. Well, that's not entirely true. Once you get over that and become more comfortable with just trying to figure it out, so you, Ms. Johnson, are having some trouble with making sure all of your contacts show up in one area or the other, like in your list of contacts, either in Gmail or on your phone. Why are some there sometimes, some not there other times? We just had to sit down and try to figure it out. And that was not something that is so specific that it's unreasonable to think that it'd be part of the actual lecture. But more importantly, what we found was that it's vitally important for the audience to see that that's actually how you figure out how to make stuff work in a lot of these technologies. It isn't, sure, we would always tell them, listen, the first thing you need to do is go in there and get your 13-year-old granddaughter. She knows how to do all of this in her sleep. And so use her. Oh, I don't have one. Go and use your neighbor's granddaughter then, because they know how to do all this stuff. So most of the questions that you may have, they have already, they can help you figure it out really quickly. My mother's biggest thing is trying to get her voicemail off her phone. How many times have we talked to her about how to do it? How many times have we shown it doesn't resonate. Something doesn't work there. So you just have to do it again and again and try to get them comfortable with it. But the biggest thing that we learned was it is important for them, for the audience, to feel like and to understand how to research, how to independently figure out how to solve the problem that you're trying to work on, and that it's okay. That doesn't make you any less or any more. It just means that you just need some help figuring it out. And here are some ways that you might want to do that. You don't be afraid to experiment. Um, it seems like our audience, according to OATS anyway, is somewhere on either end of the curve. They're either click happy and they'll be happily clicking along, learning stuff and figuring things out. They may not know how to get back in and out of it, but they're okay with clicking and learning and trying to figure stuff out. And then the other group of folks are scared to death that they're going to launch a missile if they click any button that they don't fully understand. So somehow or the other, we needed to talk to both of those arenas. But how to research and find a solution, we found that most folks were more excited about it, more receptive to, and they learned that by watching us fiddle around to try to find an answer. So anyway, it may be more helpful, we thought, and these are all things that we fed back to the OATS folks, that we just have some specific questions or some specific problems that folks can, and more open forum for people to say, for example, we could say, hey, on Wednesday at noon, come in with your tablet and let's try to figure out any problems you might have. And then you leave that kind of open and ask, what questions are you really trying to, what things are really bothering you? What are you trying to do? and then have a place and a time where people can do that, and make it kind of loosey goosey so that they can feel like we can help them. We'll just be there to help them try to solve their problem. Um, so anyway, again, more of a workshop instead of a lecture. And so one thing that we had talked about, we actually did a couple of experiments with that. We had some folks who we met and just had them bring their cell phone or their laptop or whatever, and sat with them to try to figure out their problem. It's hard to grand scale that, but we feel like that's something that'll be useful. I think in the Senior Planet centers, there's four of them across the U.S. In those centers, I'm pretty sure they have something like that, where people are just there to help answer questions. Some of the challenges that we ran into with our audience is that this could be a social event for some of our participants. I mean, they got up, they got dressed, they drove over here, and so for them, this may be the highlight of the week from a social perspective. And so we needed to be cognizant of that and needed to be open to allowing a little bit of free form to happen for those folks who needed to chat a little bit more. At the same time, you had to be able to kind of manage some of the participants who um, had more questions and wouldn't allow for the class to kind of flow freely. So those are the challenges that we ran into. Just trying to make sure we were using the time with the time for the participants in a way that was useful for all of them. So it's a balancing act, and we just kind of saw that as a challenge along the way.
For sure. Sheena, before you move on, Trevor asks in the chat, is there a suggested ratio for participants versus lecturers?
We found that so our average was about six. We probably could have dealt with maybe three or four more, but having much more than that would get to be unruly for sure. So I would say somewhere between a dozen or fewer worked for us. Now, I know that there's some other folks who teach these kind of sessions who may be able to manage it a little bit better, particularly if you stick strictly with the lecture, then you can go a little bit bigger. But because we found ourselves as being a little more free, we about a dozen is about all we could handle really, and that's with the two of us. I'm a Android person and she's a Mac person, and so we kind of could go back and forth, but essentially that was what we felt like. More than a dozen would make it a little difficult.
Fair. And then Sophia asks, how many lecturers did you have? Which I think you answered. You had the two for your about a dozen participants, right?
Yes, yes. So the way we would structure it is usually we would do a class from 9 to 10ish, depending on what the library would let us do. We do have one in the morning, and then we do another one in the afternoon. Sometimes they were They were repeats of the same session, just so we can get more people. But most of the time, we did one in the morning. 1 hour seemed to be about the right, with the size, a dozen or less, with the size and the subject matter, that seemed to be about right, about an hour. Um, but we would do one in the morning and one in the afternoon, and we do those on Tuesdays and Thursdays or Mondays and Wednesdays or whatever. And then do it again the following week so we could get in more classes during that one session. But that seemed to be the way to go. And yes, it was just the two of us for our particular grouping. Any questions about any of this anymore? What I did want to make sure I mentioned was, so I'm just an old fellow, and but I know that there are that you guys could, as you dig into more and decide what you want to do or how you want to roll the oats in, or how you want to use leverage all of this. There's a Senior Planet licensing program, and so that you probably have had to do this with some of the other stuff that you're using for your digital learning. Um, but our regional manager is Ryan. I'm leaving his information here. He has most of the from Idaho down through Arizona over to California, and so he is the guy that we go to as our program manager, and he knows about this conversation, and he is ready to answer any questions you might have on how you might utilize this program or the collateral that's already there. So I just wanted to make sure you knew that he is ready and willing and able to help you along the way. And that's it. That's all I wanted
Perfect.
to talk about. If there are no other questions, just if you go out to Senior Planet in AARP or seniorplanet.org, www, you will see what I'm talking about and how crazy things are, how many things are out there. There's no end, honestly, to everything that's available.
Yeah, that's fabulous. So Sophia asks if you could go back to Ryan's contact page so she can jot
Okay,
that down. I'll make sure to include it in the follow-up email as well. And then
okay,
Tina is also able to speak to licensing, Tina from Learn Idaho. And then I do have some questions. So we have some content left here. So
good, good. Go ahead,
everyone.
Tina.
Have I unmuted myself? Oh my gosh, I need tech lessons for sure. Hi, Sheena. I just had to cackle when you said there were those in class that are afraid they're going to launch a missile with they touch their phone. So true. That is so true. So I'm Tina Barnett. I'm with Learn Idaho. We are a Boise-based nonprofit providing free education to older adults throughout the state. I have Learn has held the Senior Planet license since April of 2022. So I'm heading into my fifth year of teaching Senior Planet content. I see that we have Trevor Hansen on the call. He's a trained Senior Planet instructor through Learn's license. We also have a librarian, and Trevor's at Meridian Library District. And then we have a librarian at Ada Community Library who's also trained in our content. Plus, we have another person that is trained that works with Learn. We're about to launch a program for veterans. And so we have the way that they do the licensing, it's based on geography. So Learn actually has the Ada County, Canyon County, and Elmore as our sort of domain for licensing. And then we coordinate, have done some stuff with Sheena and Lisa in the past. They're a little bit of a different entity, so they're directly working through OATS. And Sheena, the curriculum looks basically the same. It's the same classes, but yeah, it's been a great program for us. We offer classes not just at Dick Erdley Senior Center, mostly there Monday on a regular basis. Come to one of our classes if you want to see what it's like. I teach Senior Planet, but I also create my own curriculum, so we teach a variety of things there. But we are able to teach these classes in person. We can't record them or video record them. We can also teach them on Zoom, which is a challenge in itself. I'm sure Sheena would agree with that. But Senior Planet does have that really robust online space where they teach all of these classes too on a schedule. You can attend them in person. But yeah, I do lectures mostly, but I also do workshops. I had 28 people in class recently. So we have some bigger classes at Dick Eardley
Wow.
Senior Center. They have grown, and it's kind of a little crazy, but absolutely wonderful. And then we throw AI into the mix of showing people how to solve their own problems. So I'm happy to connect with anybody who'd like to become a trainer on Learn's license. You'd be volunteering with Learn. I administer the program, but you could come and join our program and take part in the training or talk to Ryan. Yeah, he'll probably direct you to me for Ada Canyon and Elmore County.
Great. Great.
It's fabulous. Thank you, Tina. So for back to Sheena or Tina, since you do these classes as well, we can either of you can answer this, but I'm really curious when you have these classes and things like some of the most common questions that you all get, some of the things that keep coming up and up. Maybe they're class related, maybe they're not, but the common questions that you get.
I'll go first, Tina, just a little bit. It varies so much given the subject matter. Um, Often the participants have had some um, less than stellar experience with trying to do what we're trying to show them. And so then there's a little more angst about it and a little more concern. But one of the things, particularly in streaming platforms, for example, we did a couple of classes actually before we became OATS, and we talked about how how it would how does it work to get off cable? Everybody wants to get off cable. Get off cable. It's too expensive, and they don't treat us right, and we want to be more specific. So you're trying to teach them how to get on a streaming service, but you have to remember that from their perspective, where they come from, when you hook yourself up with a service or something, you kind of need to be loyal to it. They feel like there's a connection that they have to it, and that they should, tough it out and grit it out. And we're just like, no, that's not how that works. You give it a shot. You may even do just the, sometimes they just give you a free month or whatever. Jump in there for the free month and look at all of Outlander if you want, and then jump back out. You're not married to any of this stuff. So it just exposed to us another way that it might be a little bit different in that it's like my mother. If the phone rings, she jumps to answer it. And if my phone rings, I rarely answer it, particularly if it's a landline. I never answer it. Let it go to voicemail or let it go to, and so it's just they come from a different place. And so you kind of have to allow for that. I don't know, Tina, what's one of the things that you always ran into?
Um, you know, we cover scams almost every single session. And so understanding what those text messages are, what it means, how to spot a scam. I do a fair amount of engagement about that subject. Also, just sort of all the things that are in settings and the importance of exploring and understanding your settings app on your phone. That's kind of where it all happens. And so there are a lot of questions like that. There's a lot of misunderstanding about, my phone is almost full. The storage, I keep getting this weird message. Storage is full. What is the cloud? Where's my stuff going? How much cloud service do I have? What's the difference between cloud and what's storage on my device? And so, it's a really interesting space working with older adults, and there's a lot of need for repetition. And one of the things that I think makes it most difficult for older adults is a lot of time, well, learning technology and sort of sort of embedding that stuff in your brain is short-term memory, right? And that what goes as we age is sort of the ability to sort of lay down those short-term memories. So my perspective is teaching them that you don't have to remember all this information. You just have to know how to find what you need to do. It's just like librarians tell us all the time. They're not packing all that information in, right, Chelsea? You just know how to go find it when you need it. And so, that's been sort of the biggest takeaway for me is helping them understand how to answer their own questions because a lot of them they have worn out their welcomes with their 13-year-old granddaughter or their children or their neighbor, and those people see them coming and pull the blinds or the kids put on their headphones, and also that kind of learning doesn't help them often because people that don't work in this space with them don't realize that they need to show and take time as opposed to just beep bop boop bop, here it's done, grandma, and they don't learn anything from that. Yeah.
Boy, if I have to tell my mother one more time how to get on the church Zoom, the church YouTube thing, honestly, it's just like every week, here, Mom, what you have to do is you have to clean. And then next week, Mom, what you have to do is you have
Yeah.
to. And
And I
finally, I decided she might not be trying to, she wants me to just be
Yeah,
there.
but it's just right. And they really actually love to have things written down.
Uh-huh.
Another question that I get asked a lot, Chelsea, is where's the manual, right? And it's like, well, those don't exist anymore. And so, creating step-by-step guides, simple guides, or teaching them how to create those guides for themselves with their AI chatbot on one device while they try to troubleshoot another device, yeah, is helpful.
Good, good.
Totally fair. Yes, I resonate a lot with all of that. We talk a lot about digital comfort here, that ability to just be comfortable being a little bit confused and not quite knowing what's going on, but still having that ability to just click around to find out and to not be afraid that you're going to launch a missile. Was a great analogy. That's the level
Yes.
of fear that I definitely see too in my experience. The printed guides reminds me, I'm going to throw a link to the chat, but available for free for any libraries or nonprofits in Idaho. We do have some printed Windows 11 guides. So if you have people on Windows 11 and they want those handheld guides, you are more than welcome to order those from us. Our shipping is closed down for a little bit, but as soon as we are back into our building, we will send those out to y'all. But I wanted to highlight
Great.
that. All right, friends. Thank you to Sheena. Thank you to Tina for popping in and answering questions and sharing as well. Really appreciate that. We'll hold for just a few more seconds and see if there are any final questions for Sheena about any of her programming, anything like that. Otherwise, we will let you all off of here. But pause for just a moment. I am not seeing any. So I will say that our next digital access community call is going to be in June. So we will, topic to be determined, but I threw a link to that in the chat if you're wanting to get that on your calendar way ahead of time. We will be back again to talk to you about more digital access topics and to hear from more community partners who are out there doing the work. But thank you once again to Sheena for presenting today. Really appreciate your time and your expertise. This was absolutely phenomenal, and we will catch you all at our next workshop here soon. Have a fabulous afternoon.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for having me. Bye bye.